In my late night, I don't know if many of you have sleepless nights, but one of there's many different tricks to try to fall asleep, but honestly, besides sleeping pills and people say do all kinds of crazy things, one of the bizarre things that works for adults is watching comedy, stand-up comedy. And the main reason we have found in the data and even our own experiments is the reason why people can't fall asleep is because you can't get your mind to shut off. And so you need a distraction method. If you ever have young children and they get upset at something, you like distract them off the topic and next thing you know, they stop crying. It's like amazing how it works. So we found out this program that we call Yoga Nidra, so we call it sleep class, is literally the adult version of a distraction method. So I was watching comedy this week, I was gonna fall asleep usually, and the first thing the comedian pulled up was this. It's like muntu nugu muntu nuga bantu.
I thought that was pretty good, Charlie.
Thank you. But it's saying a human is a human because of other humans. And I thought it was so simple as a comedian, but it's powerful, the idea of community. I know with the digital world and what we've done now from work from anywhere and all the literature out there, it's like, do we really need to be around other people? Can't we just all be virtual? And this notion of that's not what brings the best out in human beings. I think next week, the class we might teach is around the notion of curiosity and the connection of curiosity to creativity, which of course then connects to innovation. And how even Steve Jobs would always talk about the need for human to human in physical proximity because a lot of the best occurs impromptu. The unstructured, unplanned discussions that occur. And when you have human to human, communication is not just a verbal thing. It also oftentimes is, they say 15% at most verbal, the rest of it visual, through all types of body language and everything else you can imagine. So, Community 3.0, and this is the very first draft. This is coming from a brainstorm session that Mega and I had last Friday that we're about to embark on a pretty bold journey, but you guys are all part of it, so let's see what happens. First off, this is something that someone had put out there. So I'm just gonna close this door. It feels like someone's gonna just pop it in. But
This idea of community, when you think of community, I think a lot of people think about, well, we're gonna ask you to sort of brainstorm, think about that a little bit. What does community mean to you? I think for everybody it's a little bit different. But when you think about college, for a lot of people, that becomes one of the things that comes to mind, right? Like the last time you felt like a true sense of community was when you were in school.
And some of you who are more recently graduated would be like, I still hang out with my college friends, my college buddies, because it was only a few years back. But the further you go, at best you might have an annual gathering, right? Maybe a couple times. Maybe when you go home for the holidays, it's possible. But if you can remember back to the 4 years or some of your 2 years when you were in college, I think college more than high school because you're truly alone, you're an adult now.
Right.
And when you think about what college represents, your work is the studies, then there's social, of course, then there's like meals that tend to occur together, there's even vacations, there's sports, there's like life experiences of whether it's dating or breakups and, family trauma, and everything you can imagine, all occurring while life is occurring together. That's true community that we remember. So what I want you to do, and so this is a little bit unusual to what we've done. I say unusual, don't type in the chat yet. And the reason is, what tends to occur with chat and tweets and Slack and every other tool out there, we're just used to almost throwing up staccato comments, right? Like everything's really short and so you end up writing one line but 8 different times. Instead, I'm gonna put a timer on for maybe 1 minute to 2 minutes.
Which feels like an eternity.
Which is gonna feel long. But I want you to think about, just for a second, before you type, because then I'm gonna ask you to type. So if you have a keyboard, you can type it, but just don't hit return yet, right? So I want just kind of one thought as opposed to like your little tiny tweet-like throw-up thoughts of like, what would that be? Community 3.0, looking into the future. What is it that you want to be part of? It would be your tribe, your association, what you need, what you want to contribute into it. Like, just what does that look like? That nirvana community that you want in your life. So I'm going to put a timer for 2 minutes, little silence, and then for those on the keyboard, just start typing, or those here, just start writing, and then just hit return after the 2 minutes is up. So no chat until then. That was 2 minutes. There were just 2 minutes. I mean, that felt a little longer, right? We're not used to a lot of silence these days. All right, punch it at the chat. Okay, can we pull up the chat? Can we see it separately or no? We can't really see it here? I don't know
Not
if we
like
can.
static, right?
Actually,
Yeah, no, you can.
I can scan, I have a computer here, so I can try to give you this.
A lot of empowering those
I'm
around.
sorry, I'll read you some of what's in here. There's a lot coming in. Let's see. So Terry, empowering those around me, empowering single parents, empowering folks to invest in their health, well-being, empowering others to make a difference where they can, reassuring others they matter. You know what's interesting, by the way, is that's like, I love Terry for all the giving, but there's a part where a great community you're part of that you will sustain requires you to take as much as you give.
Yeah.
In the long run, there is that give and take balance. We'll talk about give and take in that process. Let's see, Simon Sparks. I want a tribe of decent humans who are not afraid of the truth, who are striving to leave the world a better place when they than when they found it. It's a mixture of online, in-person, indoor, outdoor. Courtney's want to be a part of real change in a company, improving the lives of others as well as myself. I want to be helpful. Let's see.
Right, community means so many things to different people. So collaborative, supportive, belonging, loving, hating, conflict resolution, et cetera, service, loyalty, flowing communication. Let's see, Simon K, to be supported instead of always being the one providing support, right? So that's similar to the give and take.
You got Fariza, people working together, collaborate to make the world a better place, having structures in place that support families, communities, workers, finding people with shared beliefs and interests so that we may work together, may be paid or unpaid, sharing information and decision-making.
Does anybody in the room have anything written down they wanted to share? I don't know, there's a bunch of them in here too. Anyone want to share what they wrote?
There's a lot in here, which by the way, you can all read the chat too.
Yeah, you can read the chat after,
The
yeah.
chat gets published up on the COA site too, but
Somewhere I feel welcome.
yeah, somebody in the room, just kind of what you wrote.
A network with a shared sense of purpose and understanding.
A network with a shared sense of purpose and understanding.
Anybody else?
I wrote everything, kind of just all-inclusive, support, challenge, competition, friendship, opportunities to grow. And then I kind of, all those words, I was kind of like mental and physical. A place for life to become as interesting as possible. Is not boring and monotonous, is exciting, always changing, shockingly awesome, opportunities to teach and learn, like, kind of, I want everything.
Shocking.
I want everything. Yeah, like I love it where I look at it as you plug in and it's juicing you up as much as you are providing juice. It's one way to look at it. When we looked up, just Google searched the word community and images, this is what pops up. You just see a lot of people, right? The whole humans being around other humans. And then the things on top say neighborhood, church, school, health, building, drawing, urban, suburban. Greg, last Friday, wrote this note to us. And I'll show you kind of what note he responded to a little bit later in this presentation. But he said, very cool. I was telling this woman from Fidelity, this is last week's Premium COA, so in Boston, in our Cambridge office, when trying to explain the partners approach, that we have external partners and we don't pay them with salary, but we're aligned in ways that all employees are not necessarily aligned. He's part of us, and both contributing to his org and his contribution to ours just feels like, honestly, he's our family on our team fighting with us. It turns on its head what a company is. I think about the old world definition of company. I think about borders. I think about walls, whether it's virtual walls or firewalls. I think about every aspect that you're either inside our walls or you're not. Even the way security works and networks work. Everything is built where it's to keep people out, right? And there's a part where just like countries and whatnot, and yet like what has happened with this digital era and age is that borders have disappeared, and are you really a citizen of one country or a global citizen? Are you this? It's like, work and life separation, clock into work at a factory, then clock out and you go home, versus it's all blended in. I always tell people so does that mean that if you're working from, 9 to 5 or even 8 to 6, if you have anything personal that happens, it's in my time, so you can't take any call and do anything personal? Or of course not. You get a note and someone you love is in trouble or in the hospital, you're gonna drop everything and go. Like, life integrates in everywhere. Like a lot of people, with the overdone kind of advice we have out there, it's all binary. Weekends plug out time, so I don't do any work. And I was like, well, then should we do the equivalent during the workday? 5 days a week, right? When you're in my time then in our company, you do nothing when it comes to family. And that's just not the way life is. People always ask us on the physical front, should I work out or should I exercise or should I sleep? And I was like, all three? They're like, well, which one should I do? Pick one of the three. I was like, you kind of need all three.
So you said workout, exercise, and sleep, the same thing.
Exercise, nutrition, or sleep.
Nutrition and sleep.
You need to do all three. And it's like life's about kind of knowing the proportions in different parts and different situations.
Right, it's
but
situational.
everything is so integrated and blended together. It's hard to draw these boundaries that we want to draw. This is from last week. We had a team, some of you may have seen, from West Point. It's awesome seeing young cadets. 18, 19, 20, and 21-year-olds. They are so sharp. And this is West Point, so this is for the Army. And we have a whole team here from the Chinese embassy, so we purposely didn't want to collide just because you guys are in unnecessary arguments at the national levels. But we kind of love all of you guys, and I wish you guys wouldn't fight so much. But putting that aside, they were here, but I love just young talent. Just the unbridled enthusiasm. So they were here, this is during the day, and then this is Laura last week giving a tour to some of these cadets. And then this is in the evening, right? You see some of us here in the picture. This is in our space right now. But the part I want to share, so I'll go back to the picture for a second, was one of the comments several actually of the cadets made. They sat in this class last week, and then they sat in our leadership think tank. We have several levels, but one of them, the top level, is leadership think tank group A that Megan and I run. And there's a team of people that we mentor every week that come from different industries. And we have this thing called Chatham House Rules. Chatham House Rules is a term that usually a lot of very high-level CEO conferences will say, meaning everything said in here is confidential.
It's like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, kind of.
It's the version of that, but for professional, right? So like
the professional version.
And our half joking but half serious is we have a lot of people. We do a lot of work with the CIA and help them a lot. And several of them come to us over the years saying, Charlie, Megan, whatever you want and need help with, you let us know. and we will get it done. And I was like, what does that mean exactly? They're like, whatever you need. So we tell the group, Chatham House rules, right? We have some people who have some favors. You break the rules and you hurt someone in this room, in that process, you will pay. We will ask for a favor that we have not cashed in on yet. So, meaning, like, it's a place where you can speak with no filter. You don't have to worry about being politically correct. You don't have to be worried about taking a stance and getting attacked. And what was fascinating, we've had groups sit in on just kind of this, we've had 70 something, almost 80 sessions run since COVID. We run every week for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And they couldn't believe the level of unfiltered speaking that was occurring.
Yeah.
From really powerful leaders in different industries. And they came up to me afterwards in the evening and said, what a breath of fresh air.
Right.
That there are actually leaders and adults having conversations that sound like that, because all we hear
Right,
is
it's
the
filtered.
manicured, trimmed,
Yeah.
filtered conversations that you might as well just play a PR scrubbed down saying that was kind of curated.
Yeah, it's refreshing, right? I mean, I think you almost forget what it's like to just to have a real conversation that's not filtered. You know, the longer you go like that, when you see it unfiltered, it feels so good. It's like taking a
But their
load off.
comment was
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
they felt was missing in the community they long for. They long for a space to be able to do that. And the fact that we created that, even for this group every week, they thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And they were encouraged to know that many leaders, way more experienced than him, had space to do that. Because they only see the curated and filtered version. These slides are drafts, so it's messy. So this was our early view, and so let me walk you through what's in here. Community 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Starting on the very left, I think about the caveman days. I think about the notion of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, hunter-gatherer. The bottom of the pyramid in Maslow was all around food and shelter. Community 1.0 was all around survival. You needed community to survive. There's a lot of books and studies about trust and evil, and it's fascinating when they say you go to a grocery store, right? And you know the parking lot to walk to the grocery store? What cars stop to let people buy and what cars don't? It's always the crappy cars that stop, and the Jaguars and the Porsches do not stop. And what ends up happening is the more successful you become, the more powerful and wealthy you become, you don't need other people. You can actually isolate. As a result of it, said very simply, you become an asshole. You become an asshole to other human beings, but the less you have, your survival is dependent on the community, the tribe that you're part of.
Like you need them.
You need them
each
to do
other.
daycare
Yeah.
together, and someone's sick and I look after you. And so as a result of it, they're naturally in a rhythm every
Right.
week, consistently to look out for each other. That to me is community 1.0. It comes down to kind of how the basis of human beings, it's how you survived, right? Some hunted, some farmed, and some did this and whatnot. And you know, there was time for celebrations and there's time for this, but the majority of it was around survival. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs goes all the way to the top about self-actualization and, you know, fulfillment, but the reality is most of it is around food and shelter. How do you survive? Then I fast forward to community 2.0. And the way I would describe community 2.0, on one hand, it's a luxury when you can move off of just pure survival. And you have communities that occur at the very top. PEM stands for physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. The very top, you have like churches and nonprofits. Mental is like technical. So you have like, you know, you have communities and meetups of engineers, and you have communities of like, you know, accountants and CFOs and people in every industry you can imagine. Then you have emotional communities, right? You know, lost ones, people who are single parents, people who are dealing with all kinds of trauma. Then you have at the bottom all kinds of communities, the whole fitness world, right? You have people who dance, people who do CrossFit, people who do this, and it's amazing. They all feel like kind of like mine's the best, right? And then you have people on food, whether you have vegan communities or you have like, you know, gluten-free communities. I mean, there's all types of, you know, cooking, chef communities. I'm sure there's like meditation communities. I mean, but this notion of homogenous, if you look at most of these communities and you look at the type of people in them, they are, by definition, usually fairly homogeneous. It's like the same type of person gets attracted.
Yeah.
Where we see community go in Community 3.0 is the opposite of homogeneous. It's bringing in pockets of homogeneous communities together in a way that you have diversity. True diversity of different people, but not like you have to now be like me, but we get to see partnership in the process. The way we put it was, imagine a professional network. Most of us here are adults, right? So a professional network. We have CFO networks, we have CEO forums and networks, I mean, different networks, meets a social or a country club. Country clubs tend to integrate in like your weekend activity,
Right.
Kids take classes and you have adult workouts and then you have social hour, you do barbecue together or whatnot, a potluck dinner maybe too. And then imagine going back to the college years of kind of like everything, but not just lasting 4 years, but imagine that every week. Imagine that for the rest of your life. That Community 3.0 is what we want to go after and build.
So interesting, because you're making me think about something I've said to Charlie for a long time. We've been working together for, I guess, 23 years now. And I remember telling you about this in college. I really wanted to work hard and study and do well, but I had a lot of really close friends that like to have fun, and I did sports and whatnot. But I remember thinking, I just wish I could find a group in high school that wanted both. And I found that in college, where you're working hard, you're having fun, you're playing a sport. You can kind of do all of it, and I never found it in high school. I found it in college, but then you leave college and you're like, where does that exist? That I could be learning, trying to achieve, but also have fun, but also play a sport or maybe a game. I don't know, it's like, how do you do all of it every week? It felt impossible. It feels impossible. You gotta work, and then you have children, and then all these responsibilities, and all of a sudden you're like, where's that feeling, right? And it can kind of sound like a tantrum, like, when do I get to go back to college? Well, never, right? You got 4 years and that's it. But, this question, why can't you find that at work? Why can't you do all those things at work?
But you'll find these
With
like
now
kind of
kids
these,
and spouses and.
but you'll find these incredible, very tight tribes. Some of
Yeah.
them kind of can seem almost crazy,
Right.
right? I mean, I spent time for 2 weeks at the kibbutz in Israel, and that's like a crazy tight community, but like it's walled off to everybody else. To like,
Are
you
you
have like,
saying like,
when
yeah,
you
right.
go to,
Like-
what's the stuff in like Pennsylvania, the
Amish?
Oh, Amish,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I mean, like,
Yeah.
hey, God bless them, and I love them in the movies, but
Yes.
like, it literally feels like you can't just say, hey, can I join your community? Like,
Yes,
it's
yes.
not like,
Right, you
and,
can't just
and, but
join.
it's like all
So it's
inclusive.
like welcoming, but then, right.
But
but
there's a
then-
part
right.
that's interesting where, what we had in college, does it have to end there, and why?
Right, and why?
Right? And the needs that we have as human beings also different.
Right.
Right? I mean, the very
Yes.
classic example, even Robert Keegan, who did the study in Nextrum too, writes always is, the idea of after work, going for a jog is insane. And just go back 50 years.
That was insane.
Right? And they said, who is that crazy man
Right.
who like is literally wearing a wife beater and decides to go run around the block and the parents like look away from the window, mad at
He's a
them.
weirdo out
You're
there.
burning off energy after work?
Yeah.
No. Work took so much physical energy. You stored up on carbs and try to conserve energy.
Yeah.
But that's what work was, where now they
Right.
say sitting is the new smoking.
Right.
Like, we're in a different world and many things have changed. Two parents working, needs are different, and like, mental health has become more important before.
Right.
Mental health, what are you talking about? Like, I just need to conserve my physical health, right? And it's like, you're eating too much
I mean,
carbs.
the amount of carbs I ate as a kid, because my dad was a blue collar, 100-hour work weeks, it was like he came home late, you eat pasta, more bread, more pasta,
It's
because
funny,
the
right?
energy being burned, the idea of exercise doesn't make,
And
wouldn't
this
make any
comedian was
sense.
talking about how, it's like, like being gluten sensitive is a rich person's issue. He's like, where he grew up, he's like, bread is like chocolate, like that's like what you get as the extra. But like, your stomach hurts from having a little bread. It's like, and he was making fun of it. And yeah, it is real. Like, my wife's gluten sensitive and but there's a part where like, life's changed. Can you imagine 50 years ago, someone saying, like, I can't eat bread, right? Or I can't, no dairy for me, right? Like, things have changed, and with this change is this 100-year move. And what we've seen is there's a 100-year change that occurs of kind of what happens in the world every 100 years. And we have shared before that if you look in history, it's the 20% mark of a new century when the old model stops working. And so we had shared with the heads of crazy large organizations that starting in 2015, that 2020, 5 years from now, if history proves similar, 2020, everything's gonna fall apart and a whole new world gets created. Now, little did we know that it would actually end up the way it did, but it's crazy how much stuff is happening. And a lot of us are thinking this is temporary. Once the world goes back and COVID's finally done and Delta goes to Lambda, at some point they run out of symbols and before you know it, we're back to like just regular life. And I know a lot of us are waiting. If history shows us what's happening, it's not going back. And in fact, it's accelerating in complexity and different needs. And there's a lot of things being put out there that are actually all from the view and mindset of the old world. So one of the things I put is this. If you're thinking of community and you're looking at it from a caveman's eyes, guess what? Is not probably the right way to think of community. If you're looking at community from the homogeneous side of just one of these sleeves, that's not the right way to think of community because we can belong to multiple communities. But why not also think of building a community that has all the things I need? As opposed to I need to have different sets of friends and different sets of relationships just to deal with giving, just to deal with my fitness, just to deal with my, so that's the path that Megan and I talked Friday saying, let's go make this happen. And now what does that mean? What does it mean to be able to do that? One thought I had.
Liam asked a question, it's on my mind, Liam. He mentioned before we were talking about 1.0, 2.0, just are they attracted or do they become like? When you're in a community, like for instance in college, are you attracted to the same kinds of people, like the homogenous groups, or do you just become more like them?
I'm not sure one matters as much, but what I do know is this. Human nature, I think we mentioned before, human beings are energy conservatives. We conserve energy everywhere you can imagine. Said another way, we will always start with the easy path.
Right, you
the lazy
gravitate.
path. Why start with the hardest thing? Imagine walking into a room, right, and you want to find a new friend. Do you find the person who's going to be the toughest friend and start there? No, you start with the person who you feel will be the easiest to friend first. You don't start with who looks like the biggest asshole, who I would argue with the most. Why don't I start there? We don't do that. We naturally gravitate towards. It's just like what you see kids do. Right? They naturally gravitate towards what's easiest first.
Right.
But what happens is we stop there.
Right.
And that's what also hinders our growth. Like pain and diversity and challenge, like in this podcast next week we'll go into, talks about this, where, creativity comes from being around people in different types of settings and environments where their minds think differently than yours. And the clash of that is the notion of diverse thinking, but by definition, that means conflict. And if you're not good at processing conflict and going into difficult conversations, you might as well at least say, I'm just gonna get stuck in the easy class only. It's like, there's 101. If you want to live life on 101, well, guess what? You'll never get to 901 and 1001 and so forth. What I was going to say, just in community, what's interesting, right now the debate's about work from home population, or there's the come to work population, and then there's what they call the hybrid. But you can actually Google search this. There's a thing called a third workplace. What the hell's the third workplace? Well, before the pandemic, the third workplace was Starbucks. Or random places like the park, right? We had third workplaces, and now there are companies like Saks, partner with WeWork, had created a thing called Saks Works. It's a physical location for $300 a month. You can go, or $50 a day, and there's a restaurant in there. You can actually, buy food. There's a hair salon in there. There is co-working space, and they built one in Greenwich. There's one in New York City. The idea of like people want to work in some other place too, like. It just used to be called Starbucks, and now it's an actual thing. You can Google search the third workplace. I want to give you a quick background. If you get a chance, one of the earlier LIPs on LIP number 35, December 17th last year, I share the story just to give you context. I grew up in Nigeria in West Africa, which is kind of a very unusual place for a Korean kid to grow up. My father is the most famous scientist in the world for corn plants. It's corn, not porn, right? Corn, what's going on? Sounds similar, but he's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 5 times. His goal was to end world hunger. And Nigeria built the largest agricultural institute in the world, and they went on this project going way back of finding the top 100 scientists in every field you can imagine for agriculture. 40 different countries brought them into this giant campus in Nigeria, and literally like everything's in there, from housing, school, lakes, golf course, all the research center, and that's how I grew up. And the mistakes that you learn, someone's even watching your parents, I put over here the whole, give and take, give as you go, like doing good but making profit. A lot of people people who are in the space of doing good feel making profits like evil, right? And people who are in the for-profit world, kind of do that, well, one day I will do good.
Right.
And I love this guy who said, if you are giving back, it means you took too much. You want to give as you go. And there's always a notion of laddering that skill. It's a muscle. It's like a forehand, backhand. But my dad had that wrong, and most companies have that wrong too. They all go into, I will keep doing one side, and they go imbalanced, and that's what hurts themselves and others around them. But I'm going to give you some sense of how I grew up, because this will give you some context, especially if you're a next jumper. So this was field day. Right? If you have sports days and field day, this is me, in Nigeria, and this is what it looked like. We have field days organized because you couldn't buy anything. Like the parents would literally assemble dunk tanks. Like we had construction people in there who just worked as part of the community. So they would make these little things. This is a picture, classic, from potato sacks and races and whatnot. And this is sort of like, so my mom sent me 500 pictures to sift through to find some of these, but so she took pictures
Are your
of
legs
pictures.
tied together in that?
Yes, yes, so the three-legged races. and
Three-legged
whatnot,
races,
but
right.
we've done that,
Forgot what it's called, yeah.
Okay, so this is on Christmas. This is what they call the Director Generals on our campus. I don't know if you can guess which one I am in here, but anyone take a guess? I'm in here, my sister Chui's in here as well.
Oh, Joy's in here? Are you with us, Joy? I don't know if
So this is all homemade costumes.
Brent, what do you think, Josh?
My mother was
Can you
not
find
the best
Charlie?
at felt in costume making, because the first guy on the left was Dopey, and I was like, God, that's a good
It's a
costume.
great costume, Toby. Look at
The
his
one
ears.
that looks like I have size D breasts, that's my costume, and that's me. Once again, homemade, my mom. This is, Christmas time, the whole three wise men, right, the kings. I don't know if you can guess which one I am here, but I was one of the kings, and I had to memorize lines. Yeah, I'm the one in the green, yeah. So,
Army green.
once again, army green. Then there's all kinds of performances. We had a conference center, and I swear kids were the entertainment. There was no Netflix those days. TV in Nigeria has one movie that plays at midnight every day, and there's nothing to watch on TV. So I swear they just made us the entertainment for. This is all the people that work together, right? This is kind of happening throughout the time. Halloween, and in this case, I'm not here. The person in the middle that looks like a baby is my younger brother, who's 9 years younger. But this is them in Halloween in Nigeria, so it's kind of a weird. Halloween, I think, is a U.S. holiday, and there's a lot of foreign people, but somehow they celebrate Halloween.
Is it really like London? You don't
I
celebrate?
don't think London celebrates Halloween.
Really?
I think I don't know what the origin of
What is
Halloween
the
is.
origin? Okay, that could be a different
That's a whole
conversation. We
different
can
one,
talk about that
right?
another.
Fishing competitions, right? We had potluck dinners, fishing competitions. This is me. I got really good at fishing, and so I'm going to put a gratuitous shot here. But being in high school,
I was like, where's that? I'm
So-
just kidding. You showing off.
Well, this is before I discovered the love of food. But no, actually, that's not true. I ate a lot there. But I went to high school at Exeter, so here's me. I think this is high school, and I was really good at fishing. They would claim on this campus. The fish population would drop when I would come home for vacation from boarding school, but I would win a lot of fishing competitions. This is Christmas, and this picture here is literally kids waiting for their Christmas gift, and we had Santa, and what was interesting is this, so the way it worked in Nigeria, it's hot, so Santa Claus would come on a fire engine, right, like on the fire truck, and we would be waiting for Christmas gifts, and every parent had to wrap a gift and submit it, and that's how the Santa gave. And of course, the first year my parents didn't know that's how you do it. So everyone gets these cool toys, and I get these African drums and African beads, and I was 6 years old, and I was like, what the hell did I do wrong? That Santa is giving me such awful toys, and everyone's got these electronic or cool plastic toys, and I've got Nigerian drums. And then I learned later, it's because my parents didn't know you had to do that, and they panicked and went to the local market and bought gifts, but this is kind of how Christmas worked. This was the sheet that Megan and I brainstormed last week, Friday. Like, this is, less than a week ago. And we said, this notion of community, if we flip this on its head, and what NextJump did over the years is I didn't realize I built what I grew up with. But like most companies, in the four walls of NextJump. So if you are not a NextJumper, if you're not an employee at NextJump, you don't get access to a lot of this stuff. You might every now and then get invited because you are either a Pilates instructor or someone that we work with, but generally speaking, you're not invited to all the benefits of the work family of NextJump. And so we mapped out in the bottom right here, the old version of NextJump versus the new. And we kind of did our creative kind of decision-making and thinking saying, has that changed? What happened if we tore down the walls of what it means to be in the NextJump community? What happens if basically everything in NextJump could be anybody's? Where we have tiers though, so it's not open to meaning there's tiers in that sense. So we said at the bottom of the pyramid, it's yes to all, kind of like a church, yes to all, but as you move up, it's no to most. And so like you have to level up and earn your way. And so like if you look at what we do here in COA, we have this LIP class, but then we have these small groups called resiliency training groups in groups of 5 to 10 people. And then the best from there graduate up to LTTBs, Leadership Think Tank B groups, many B groups. And the best go to Leadership Think Tank A. There's constant tiering. The idea of having ambassadors, having what we call E-partners, so external partners in training, E-partners, Mackie is our first E-partner, and then we have I-partners, internal partners. We of course love the phrase IP versus EP and whatnot because we love acronyms. But looking at the old NextJump, we had everyone at NextJump. Then we had this thing called the Young Leadership Council, who are the next leaders being groomed up. And then at the very top, we had a group called MB21. It stands for Martha's Vineyard 21, because one of our investors gives us a private beach property in Martha's Vineyard every year for a week. It sleeps 21 people. But this place is gorgeous. It's a $50 million property with private beach, heated pool, tennis courts. And historically, 21 was the cap, but we said MB21 could be any size, starting at 2 people, all the way up to 21. We vote every year who are the people who are sort of the model citizens of the community, of the NextJump community. And we go for a week training and we do all kinds of fun stuff. And then at the very top is what we call Strat, which is really 4 of us, because you need somebody at least to be a grounding force. But we mapped this saying, what happens if we take down the walls and allow MB21 to occur from anywhere? It doesn't have to be a NextJump employee, but could be an I-partner, an E-partner, could be an ambassador. What would that look like? Now, I'm going to show you some pictures of NextJump. So this is our summer outing. And I wonder, we do this every year, except for this past year because of COVID. We rent a campground. It can hold up to 2,000 people. Lobster bake and all kinds of games and whatnot. And I was like, oh my God, am I creating the same thing that I grew up with without even realizing it? Then you look at what happens in summer outing, right? The upper right is field day, but we do all kinds of basically sports activities and giant blow up things. I was like, oh my God, like am I, without even realizing.
Looking at these pictures from your childhood mapped up against what we've done for our company, it's like it's all starting to make sense.
This is my son, Jackson. We run this slip and slide competition. This slip and slide is so long.
It's, I mean.
Literally, it is like.
Many people have been injured, let's just say.
Don't
Okay,
emphasize the injury. Injury, that like we cover it with dishwashing soap and
liquid
water.
soap.
And teams racing up and down. It's maybe around
If you have
50 yards long.
contacts, it's bad.
And I mean, yeah, you need goggles and stuff because everyone's eyes are red at the end of the day. But like crazy competition in that. Once again, the food is amazing. We will bust everyone up. And so summer outing, every year we'll fly everyone from San Francisco, London, Boston, bring them to New York, and we have a full summer outing event. And we said, what happened if we said the NextJump community is not just employees, but it's a larger community that we include. Now we're talking about Christmas. And we did something interesting. We said, why celebrate Christmas during Christmas? Right? Because in December, there's way too many events and parties and everything is a ripoff. So we said, screw this. let's celebrate Christmas in the end of February, beginning of March. Like, why not? You can spend the same amount of money, get twice as much. So the other time we bring everybody in from all the offices is during our version of Christmas. We'll say Merry Christmas in the first week of March and have a black tie. So the other one was family, kids and family. This is like literally a party that you've never seen before. We have pre-parties, post-parties, party buses, but it typically goes from 8 p.m. till 4 a.m. and there's a pre-party and a post-party, midnight buffets, crazy stuff, but it culminates up to this dance battle at midnight. So this is like, we literally rent buses and just to drive around the city, and they're like, it only takes you 10 minutes to get there. We're like, we'll drive around for 45 minutes an hour, right? And we're always late and you're just dancing and whatnot, just to warm up, just before you go to the party. This is like at the party and
There's a slow motion video. If you've ever been in one of these slow motion video things, it's a riot because it's just catching you doing like crazy stuff. Anyways, our
but
London
if you
office.
notice the trophy in the upper right, I will come back to that because that plastic trophy has more value than anything that we've had in the history of this company. And it travels around to the office, to the winning office. This is like pictures of dance battles, right? So like we actually compete, every office.
Costumes, the whole nine
Every
yards.
office is given 2 months, hire choreographers, and they train weekly, and then at the stroke of midnight, we compete with judges, and the winning office, after doing 2 dances each, wins this plastic trophy and bragging rights for a year. And what's bizarre about the way we structured all the little strategic nuances, because everyone's so nervous for dancing, and we're not dancers, at least not yet, but most of us are not dancers, I kind of am now, but what ends up happening is this: nobody has a drop to drink till midnight because they're so scared of learning the moves or forgetting the moves. And anyone's getting a little tipsy, someone will be like shoving bread and water down.
Tom made
unless
us
you're doing
moves a few
great.
years ago. I was like, Tom, no, you're not on my team anymore, no.
And you'll see people on the side leading up to midnight, like I'll go to Megan and be like, I forgot everything.
I know.
I literally forgot everything.
And then I'm like, I forget.
And she'll be like, get it together.
But like, look at
I was
the,
like, wait, but like, look at, I mean, is this,
No.
am I creating the same thing I grew up with, where instead of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, we're doing, Alice in Wonderland, and, I mean, this is it's right before COVID, this was London office with a schedule. I mean, if you look at the details,
Look like a
they
production
assign people,
studio.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is just employees, but they've been assigned captain of fun to
Captain of Fun cracks me up.
costume, makeup artist, film crew. I mean, we don't hire, it's our people and they're filming this. So at the end of the thing, I'll show you kind of the winning video that they created. So we create a lip sync battle, and it was supposed to be in person, but because of COVID, but I'm like, wait a second. Is it the same as what I grew up with happening, but like now at a company level? This is Megan and I, like we have, all
Charlie's
kinds of,
face, the duck lips, that's,
I learned the
when
duck
in
lips.
doubt, just go with the duck lips.
Because it looks
Cool.
creepy when you just do a smile when you're dancing, so you got the duck lips is what I've learned. Then you talk about like Halloween, and I don't think this was Halloween, but we dressed up for just different reasons. And I'm like, wait, this Halloween versus this on the right, it's not that different, like, except of just adults.
Dana.
See Kathy and Dana here, right? I mean, it's amazing what people are comfortable getting into during Halloween. Megan and I, Fish and Monkey, there's a whole story in this. Here's Lakia, who does not smoke, by the way, but
Yes,
look
the
at
best picture of you
her,
ever.
just, pretending to be a
Dana, look at
badass
you behind her. Like, what's going on?
nicotine-addicted smoker, right? And you can guess who this is and who it is.
How good does Charlie look as Prince? I'm sorry, you just look, but you look a dirtbaggy, but I like
Yeah,
it.
someone said you look like a dirty Prince. And I was
You
like,
do.
Prince was not very clean.
I don't know, he was I know.
Then because we did Christmas in March, eventually people said, well, is it kind of bad that we don't celebrate Christmas together? Right? And now you can't even say the word Christmas. It's always happy holidays. And I go around and say, Merry Christmas to everyone, because that's how I grew up. And so each office does its own Christmas thing. And by the way, Santa Claus, and instead of having the parents do it, we're larger and stronger than what my parents had. So we buy the gifts, and all you have to do is pick your gift. It's like there's a budget, and parent picks gifts, and some people go nuts and they buy these massive doll houses where I'm like, look, someone has to wrap it and carry it. Can you get something smaller? But Santa Claus is a gift for all the kids, right? It's the same thing, except just a different looking bunch. And, this is my wife with, Megan's Brendan Jackson, Santa Claus, who looks pooped out in the back, but not that different than the pictures I had on the right when I was growing up as a kid. These are our kids together, like in Christmas, like sitting in the Santa chair, different offices doing different things. And then as we evolve this over time to include like people we work with. So whether it's UPS, mail, building staff, we found that a lot of them weren't able to buy great gifts for their children. So we buy these amazing Christmas gifts for their nieces and cousins and children. And the only thing we ask is that the gifts are not from us, but they have to be from you. And so we have this whole thing with vendors where we will just shower them with massive Christmas gifts for their family and celebrate and do a little champagne, cheese and wine or cocktails in our office for them. So just different variations of things. Tom with his son Colin doing gingerbread houses, which we had a massive competition this year on gingerbread houses and didn't realize how competitive it could be. And I thought I like built an awesome house that looked more like a crack house in Miami. And then John Hilliard built like a giant 5 or 6 story pagoda.
Let's be honest,
on
his
gingerbread.
wife did
It's
it,
like,
but
yeah.
whatever, it's okay, John. I know you act like you did it, but I
If you see
think-
the pictures, you would be like, that's not real.
Yeah.
But giving, we adopted public schools. This is our old office. And we rented school buses and took the whole company up to go see the public school that we went and adopted and started helping. And then we did the opposite, brought them into our office. And these are like elementary school kids taking spin class for the first time. They were so excited. I think they screamed for the entire time. Even though it was a 45-minute class, they wanted to go 2 hours and they wouldn't stop screaming. But the notion of, so how do you think of strategically building a community, the right way versus the wrong way? This is a slide from, I think, lip number 4, if you remember, if you go back in the video. If you think of the old way to do things, the 20th century, it's all connected to you legislate it, you have rules, a senior person dictate it, you mandate it. So if you find yourself doing anything that looks like legislate, dictate, mandate, you should start to know you're working in the wrong century. Then you go to the right side, and how does the 21st century program build occur? And we said from the beginning, what matters is the right team is what matters first, then the ritual, then the content. And watch everyone that has discussions on almost anything, they all talk about the content first. And what you'll find is that if you find yourself talking about the content first, I would say that is not, you're doing it the wrong way. Because the old way is people didn't matter, the content is what matters. The strategy matters, the people, they'll just get in line. Yep, because you're gonna legislate, dictate, mandate. The value starts with the right who. Who matters first? And in a simple way, I would say who as in everyone, and then the senior team. That as in, as you move up, we said, at the very bottom, yes to all. As you move up, it's no to most. You have to earn and level up, so I'll go into how to earn that. But then the second thing that matters after the who is the ritual. And the ritual matters in 2 fronts, intensity versus consistency. What we found was most things that are done well are done intensely twice a year. Yeah. If you do it more than twice a year, it will suddenly lose its firepower of the intensity. If you do it less, it's not often enough. But the other part is then weekly. The consistency is a weekly rhythm. If you can do something weekly, you will see that it will become a part of your automatic.
Can we ask this question now? Because I think it's interesting one, Simon Sparks, that you put out there, which is, this is making him think about the difference between culture and community. He was saying, I think a lot of people in the workplace right now are mistaking culture for community. Everyone wants a great culture, but they're really after our community. I don't know, Simon, you can unmute if you wanted to elaborate on that. I think it's kind of interesting.
Simon, go ahead.
Yeah.
You can probably spotlight Simon.
Yeah, I don't really have any more to say than that. My job is people and culture, and a lot of people in the UK in particular, when you talk to them about what it means to be in like a great culture, and you hear things like beer on Friday and sort of like all these like softer stuff, and you're like, that's not culture. That's just like fun stuff. You want to be part of a community. And there is some earlier lessons when we first started to introduce the Dev GPS, and you were saying culture is the discipline on the hard stuff and no HF, and I'm like, yeah, that is culture. Like that's the unspoken stuff, is like, how disciplined are you keeping people? How honest are you? Like, are you actually holding up a mirror of really what's happening? Like the culture of feedback is very different from like community, and I think that there's a it's struck me as there is like a massive difference, and I think that not a lot of people realise that there is, and they're after one thing. And saying it's not.
But can I tell you what's interesting, Simon, is this. We had shared before this guy, Jim Fadigan, who invented the Sesame Street characters, really top neuroscientist in the country. And I love what he had shared, and this is going so far back, that the pecking order of what was most important, as in important because it made the most difference for teams, for organizations, used to be natural resources first, right? Then came capital, as in money. Third was technology, and the fourth was people, human capital. And that was been the pecking order, meaning if you had land that had oil, you're gonna win. If you had more fertile soil, if you had iron ore or gold, like natural resources matter, which is why it's all about real estate, it's all about location, right? That was, I mean, you can imagine if anyone says that now, you're like, shut up, right? Really, you can be anywhere, work from anywhere, it's not about location, but it was natural resources. Then two came capital, whoever had more money. You know the idea of everyone's complaining about budget? Throw more money at it, and it shows up now heavy in the startup world and venture capital, private equity. Companies with more money do not succeed. In fact, the data is showing the opposite. Companies with too much money tend to fall apart. What they end up doing is they scale things that are just moderate and mediocre.
Yeah.
What ends up happening when you have a lot of money, you try to buy your way to success. You take something that's average and you just try to do a lot more of it. I was talking to the former president of Coach this week, and I was telling her, most companies are filled with large teams of average people. Large teams of average people lose out consistently in this day and age to a small team of elite.
Yeah.
Even two elite can beat out a large team of thousands, tens of thousands are average. And so this is where before capital was like head count. I can just get a lot of, you brag about how many people you have. Mm-hmm. If you go and search now the number of public companies reaching market cap valuations of 10 and even $50 billion with less than 100 employees, less than 50 employees. There are companies showing up with less than 20 employees. It's unheard of. Yeah. Before, you had to have at least 5,000 employees, if not 10,000 to go public. So capital, money doesn't make enough difference for most people in their lives anymore to actually succeed as an enterprise, a team, an organization. Yeah. Third was technology, right? And then fourth was people. If you look at what's happened now in this next 100 years, the list has completely flipped. The bottom half is natural resources at the bottom and money. The top half is technology and number one is people. The predictor of future success is directly connected to your ability to not only recruit, retain, and develop the tiny, small team of elite high performers. You don't need a lot. This guy, Shiv Khemka, I think he might come next week possibly. He currently educates, it's one of the top 10 billionaires of India. He educates 10 million children, sponsors through his $4 billion foundation, in order to find less than 5 Gandhis. He's training 10 million to find 5. You just need that few. His view is if there were 2 Gandhis, the world would have been that much better. So how do I literally create a funnel of 10 million to get to 5 or less? So I say this because you have to put that change in the context of this word culture and community. Mm-hmm. When people talk about the word culture and the pecking order was people were number 4, you see it's very different. Culture was just a fancy word to keep people in line, and if you don't behave, we should replace you. Because what was much more important was that the technology doesn't go bad, right? Maintain the technology, like even for the military. Make sure the plane runs properly. That's more important than the airman, right? Or the sailor. Everything's about budget things and whatnot. But this is changing very fast.
Yeah, you went down a different, it's interesting, but Simon, I was thinking when you were mentioning culture is like not the social component, it's not the beer and chips that you get on Friday. And when I think about where Charlie and I used to spend an enormous amount of our time, over a decade, maybe 15 years ago, we spent a lot of time building that culture, which was honestly what it became was we need to figure out how to make sure everybody's having fun. And it got really old really fast, which is why we made it the job of every next drummer to contribute to that versus we're creating these events and then somebody comes to an event and like, well, I want different kinds of chips or a different beer. It's like, my God, the CEOs or whoever it is has to be in charge of making sure everybody's happy. But it's like this balance of
Social capital.
social, well, give and take though. I'm like, wait a minute, we're paying you for a job. We're trying to add the extra, but the extra's not good enough. So then you start to get jaded. You're like, well, as a leader, I'm like, I'm not sure I wanna, because that's the balance of a give and take. You're like, well, so
So can I tell you,
then we made employees start to
yes,
contribute
but
to
can I tell you,
that.
all of that to me is.
It's still the
No, no.
older model.
Give and take, yes, but I think it's all too narrow a view. When I think about simply now that the number one lever of both success and failure in organizations comes down to people.
Yeah.
It's not, I need the body of 100,000, 10,000 million people.
the elite
It literally,
few. It's
it
the
takes a
few.
few to screw up a company, it takes a few to make it succeed.
Right.
Like that few, and they're
Right.
teams, but very small teams, of smallest unit of team is two.
Yeah.
So then I think about if the asset has changed, right? It's not about maintenance of an aircraft, or
Right.
it's not maintenance of a car, oil changes and whatnot. But it's like, think about the maintenance of a human being. What would make this human being perform at the highest level, not as a solo, but as a teammate at a
Right.
minimum of even two? I think about the idea of a cup. Better me,
Yes.
better you. How do you fill your cup up so that it's got like nuclear energy, Iron Man like, whatever that core thing he wore, energy? How do you get that to
Right.
happen? And how do you set it up so that this human energy and the cognitive power,
Yeah.
both body and mind,
But I guess what I'm
is not
saying is-
just about hiring someone
Well,
that
that's what
you're
I'm
done.
getting is you can't do that for everyone. You can't do that. When we say the pyramid, that everybody is welcome as a part, you can't give that kind of,
That's not
you
true.
can't create that
Disagree.
kind of, for
I disagree.
everybody.
You can't.
For a large group of
No, I'm
people,
saying you can,
If-
but it's tiered.
it's,
Meaning,
Yeah.
there's a version for everyone, right? And it might just be a summer outing, right? A lot of fun,
that's
right?
not
You might-
nuclear energy.
No,
all you're
no,
saying.
no, but you know what, it's, nuclear energy is all relative.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
People sitting in LIP, I know a lot of people over the course of the pandemic have said, this has changed my life, and you've written us amazing stories of how it's changed your career and your life
Yeah.
and spousal, parent, kid, colleague relationships, right? Impacted.
Yeah.
But as you tier up,
Yeah.
there is a lot more that gets even stronger.
Right.
And what's interesting is this, most people in the industrial age, since people was number 4 on the list,
Yeah.
everyone when it comes to culture and people always just goes down to values, which is kind of the same thing for everyone, sort of, it's another way for homogenous. But it's also like everyone focuses on hiring, hire the right person, you're done. Like, that'd be like school saying, you know what, it's all about admissions. You just focus on admissions. If you just admit the right students into that school and you just step away, you're done. Like, you know the whole classic old adage, I just hire right and I get out of the way. I'm like, can you imagine like a Belichick for the Patriots or the top coaches in any
Yeah.
field saying that? Like, I just,
It's all
everything's
about
about
the draft
scouting.
and then yeah.
So what we found was hiring and onboarding at best is 15% of what's important. The 85% is what happens in the ongoing training. So when we think of culture, when we think of the community, we think of what matters, I think about the idea that I am not only bringing value to the community, I am plugging in and getting supercharged from the community. That 85% is what we call development, training, but it could be social, it could be physical, it could be mental, it could be spiritual, and there's many different ways. So I'm gonna show you what we're proposing, this bold journey of what we do twice a year for our Leadership MB21. And so what we're looking to do is maybe as soon as a few months from now, and definitely into next fall, when we do our MB21 trip, but the group's gonna look different. It could be any of you in the process. So this is a picture from our MB21 offsite, this private beach. We have all kinds of workshops, indoor, outdoors. This is like, the private beach, literally you can hear the ocean waves, us, kind of trying to do the jump at the same time and not.
Me and Greg are like down.
They kind of went the opposite direction, which is all
We were
right.
in the mid-left.
Being off sync. Heated pool, this huge pool, we heat up. It takes 2 days to heat it up so it becomes like a hot tub. Because it's a pool, not a hot tub. And we have like a midnight run as part of the tradition into the cold ocean, sometimes freezing, sometimes not cold, to then jump in the pool and just hang out at the pool just till 2, 3 in the morning talking and just in different pockets. Every meal is cooked by a team. The team is broken up. And so one of the days you have to come up with a menu as a team, you have to go buy groceries, whatever you want, and you have to cook it, serve it, and clean it, but just one day, and then just moves on, right? And so you just have to do it once, but we go from Tuesday till Sunday. And what's interesting, by the way, too, is this. As you move up on the right who, I put in the other sheet, structured versus unstructured. When you have everybody, you have to structure a lot of stuff. But when it's the right who, you can unstructure more. So this offsite, the 2 days are highly structured. Then there's 2 days of complete no structure. And the only structure is coming together for dinner, whichever cooking team cooks. And the thing works beautifully. But then what we do is, we do this, once again, intensity twice a year. The other half, so usually this occurs around March, we do a learning tour. We have a lot of organizations we've helped, and so we cash in our chips. And so this is Air Pacific in San Diego. We spent a day with the Navy SEALs, then we spent a day with Air Pacific, and you get to see stuff and take pictures of stuff that's really cool. This was in Whidbey Island in Seattle. Like, we were standing by the plane, they do what, these touchbacks or something?
Touchdowns.
Like I think it's a touchdown football, no?
Well,
But what they do is, you know,
I think it's called a
when they have to land on
Somebody
a ship.
touch
you
and
know,
go, touch
yeah,
and
touch and
go,
go.
Brent said, sorry.
Like, they have to like land in a box that's like 2 by 2 feet by 2 feet and hook the thing when they land on a aircraft carrier. So they practice this. So they kind of land, hit the ground and take off. We were so close that we're like, this is so cool, we're taking pictures. Plane takes off and we all fly back. And we were like,
Shaking.
is this safe?
They were like,
mean,
I don't know, we've never done it before. You're the first group we've taken right up this close.
And so, like, once again, access to very cool stuff. I mean, this is the trip to the CIA. We have access to a lot of the things that we, can go to. And the trip we're looking to schedule, I think likely in March, is a trip to go see how they make Marines in the Paris Island, which is also very cool. But it's like all ways to learn. And so we do a learning tour for this MB21 group, separate from an offsite in Martha's Vineyard. And then Adam Grant, who we got to meet over the years, he wrote a book called Give and Take. And I think even most people don't quite understand sort of the aspects of give and take. Great relationships in the long run become give and take relationships. But he found, if you look at the bottom half of the screen here, the most successful people in the world were givers with a capital G-I-V-E-R-S. But the least successful in the world were also givers with a small G-I-V-E-R-S. In the middle were what they call matchers and takers. I think we all know takers, right? They just want to take as much as, if you're giving free samples, I'm all over it, right? The minute you stop, I'm out of here. A matcher is a quid pro quo, right? You know the friend you go to dinner with and says, okay, so I paid last time, so you have to pay? And what they found was a matcher is seen at the same way as a taker is seen, right? And so what's interesting is even with Sadie from 305, we were explaining to her our idea of community this past weekend. And her instant question was, so what's the financial model? What's your take? And my reaction was, you're looking at it from the wrong lens. You're asking the question from the matcher lens. The matcher lens is, so if you're doing this for people, what metric are you measuring to what you're going to take, say in a week, a month, maybe 3 months? The idea of a matcher is that we're not willing to go on a limb for someone, helping someone, giving, unless I see payback pretty quick. And the question is, how fast does the payback have to be in your mind before you say, that's it, no more? And the giver at the bottom is the person who had no discernment. Anybody asked for help, I help. They're the people taking advantage. Takers seek out those people and just deplete them. My parents are that. I've seen them at that bottom for that reason. But at the very top, this is what's interesting. Number one thing these givers do, discernment. They have the most rigorous selection process of who, the right team, who matters. And they're not looking for a tit-for-tat matching, but they're mindful that they play a longer game. It might be 6 months. It might be sometimes even 1 to 5 years. But when they don't see a give and take balance over time, a much longer time horizon, they cut those people out. They don't care how famous you are, how good you are. They are what they would call not the right people. So there's this notion of understanding this. This note that Greg had written at the beginning, it started from a note from Mackie. So Mackie, let's embarrass you a little bit. I'll give you guys a chance to read this. Maybe, trying to think. And just tell us thumbs up once you've read it. this was the note that Greg responded to when I shared it with Greg. This idea of community and what we're looking at. And by the way, I love this. Ham sent us this picture.
Hamish. You're calling him Ham now?
Just to get right. So Linda is part of this group. And he's like on a plane, I'm sure you heard that, like, the pilot Linda Wackerman, who was a
like, wait a second.
Navy admiral who flies jumbo jets for American Airlines. And he just sent us his note on Sunday, like, how cool is it? Like, you start to see, like, our community, this next, I think
I would die if I went on a plane with my kids going to like Disney World and Linda was like, hey Megan, and she's flying the plane, hey Linda. Like, I just, it's like a weird, very cool, oh my God, and then Chris Kelly at Disney could be like,
It's true.
it's like,
But,
it would be so,
and it's like the way.
and how do we know each other
By
from
the
the
way-
leadership and practice class?
But the way Megan and I are
started during
different, like,
COVID.
since
Yeah.
Linda's the head pilot, I would be like, Linda, can you just tell everyone to wear a seatbelt, and can my kid try to just drive the plane?
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
like,
that's not gonna happen.
But I would ask. But,
And let's hope she would say no.
all right, so, she owes us some favors. This is the last slide, just wanna, we have this phrase, they all mean the same thing. To do the little things so others can do the great things they're meant to do. Why the little things is a better me? When something is like sustainably growing for you, that's what we call the better me. It becomes little for you to give to somebody else. But when you find the right who, this is the better you.
Yeah.
Like you are, the people who are not great givers only give when you ask them. People who are great givers, they're perceptive. They're looking for those and what they need, and they find ways to plug in on something that, by the way, is not taking their shirt off and emptying their bank accounts, but like there's a notion of like, it was interesting, we went to go see Sadie 305 in her thing, and she had this room full of like all the junk they have, right? Too much stuff. And I was like, wow, this is such cool stuff. DJ equipment, lights. I was like, your junk is like gold to us. And I was like, what do you guys need? She was like, look at our chairs. We have like a patio, like fold-up chair. We're like, oh my God, do you know how much office chairs we throw away? Like this idea of one
Your junk
person-
is someone else's gold, right?
Yes. That notion, that's
Like, we're like lights, LED lights, and just making chairs.
this idea of taking the notion, and so we said, what makes sense? What is it? The COA community? Is it the LIP community? Is it the PA community? Is it this community? Is it like? And we said, you know what? The community is a next jump community, and taking what we have built over 27 years, with our walls being closed off, we're opening up the walls. And this idea of hub and spoke, and I've talked about this before, the number of famous and billionaire powerful people where we offer to be a spoke into their hub, and they refuse to be the hub. And I say refuse because, being a hub on one hand, so it's great, we can brand it the Next Jump community, but a hub has also the longest stretch of disproportionately giving to make up for the holes and all the needs that all the spokes need. It's capital intensive, it's energy intensive. I just give you some examples here, just of, with Mackie, like, he has a gala he does, right? Everyone's going event crazy since COVID, November 30th, Giving Tuesday. His top 50, maybe even 100, right? Top donors, it's like the who's who of people. Finding an event space, not only is costly, but it's really hard to find these days because everything is booked up. Right? Everyone's having a bar mitzvah or a 50th birthday party or something to celebrate.
Yeah.
Well, we can do it here. It's really easy. Doesn't cost us much of anything. I gave Mackie this other example. One of his top board members, Bill Wolf, is like top executive out of ESPN and loves steady buckets. Even after his child, he's just sitting there 9 to 6 all day in the practices. And my discussion with Mackie was, but what happens if his child one day says, I don't like basketball so much anymore, Dad. I don't want to be part of this. Well, you lose this great relationship. But if you're part of the Next Jump community and spoke in, Bill Wolf came to our Leadership Academy around a month ago. We helped him think about his own career and what he needs. And suddenly, by being part of this larger community, he has many reasons. And his wife might come in and do a dance class and maybe do a makeup day and do a book club. My wife loves to do it. Mark, Ella's, my wife and Mark, Megan's husband, like, when it starts to go in at that level, it's like, wow, like, and then, just a small
It would
example.
stretch throughout your whole life too, between like your kids, and as your kids get older, like you ebb and flow. I think the idea is that it would take you through all of the, when you have little kids, older kids, when your kids go off to college.
But I'll give you an example, like, So Mackey has this unique access next Friday. He gets to get kids to play in the basketball court for the Brooklyn Nets, right? Like, wow. So I mentioned it to my son Jackson, who loves basketball, but he has to miss a little bit of school. And so he like gives me that hesitation of, well, Dad, I have a presentation. I was like, I'm just gonna tell Mackey you can't make it. He's like, whoa, Dad, whoa. Are you kidding me? Of course I'll make it. I will find a way to do a presentation another day, like coolest thing in the world, right? Like, wasn't a lot for
Yeah,
Mackey.
that's cool, we've said,
but,
like, what an
it's like-
amazing opportunity.
I mean, Jackson has been talking to his friends. I am like hero dad for getting him access to play basketball where NBA players are playing. This example with Mike Collette, I think it's been around 10 months. He's been teaching every week this class of CrossFit. We had no idea. He just did it on his own and then he brought his top clients, some of them like Steve and Jay, they came to our leadership academy a few weeks ago, and now they're integrated in at a leadership training level on top of CrossFit and social stuff. We think about 305, they were, a business we found. We have a venture arm. We led the investment, put a big check in ourselves, and every week we bring 10 of their staff to be part of Premium Co-op, leadership training and whatnot. We said that there's many entry points into the hub and spoke, and I love the idea of hub and spoke that you can be a Perks at Work shopper. You can literally be in COA. We have kids, we have adults, we have leadership, we have all these other programs. We have Premium COA, physical offices being used as an entry point. Leadership Academy is something we've done since the beginning of 2014. There's 5,000 people who have come through, and then there's one next week, and then the month after. It's like the who's who of people. We have companies we invest in out of Next Jump Ventures. We have companies we help nonprofit as a Next Jump social capitalist. I meant social capitalist, and then friends and family of Next Jump, and then we have other things getting integrated in, Steady Buckets community, Prototype, CrossFit, One Sculpt, Bar, 305 Fitness. The old world in the last century was all around borders, walls, and boundaries. The new world there is no borders, it's fluid integration. But there are levels that, we say it's a grave injustice to treat unequals equally. And so the yes to all at the bottom, but no to most at top. So how do you screen? What is the selection? It's actually much simpler than you think. It's up here. It's always been up here. That we are looking for people who are constantly growing themselves. Call it better me, highly competent, constantly growing, but also constantly strengthening the muscle of helping others that give as you go. And what you find is most people fail the test of consistency. They'll do it for once, maybe even up to 3 months in the hopes that they can just go and get everything they want from you. But they won't do it weekly. They will fail consistency. The one last point I have here.
Before you go, I was going to say someone was asking even direct messaging about Perks at Work. So Perks at Work is the platform that we have that you guys all come through to get to COA, and obviously the different entry points. Some people don't even know what that is. That's how we make money. That's our core business. It's a shopping platform, right? It's like you look at what we do with, Charlie started the company in '94. It's a shopping platform. It's like this very basic, boring site. But is that how we make money, and is that kind of the catch to this whole thing?
Yeah, there's two ways to basically support the community, the Next Jump community that we're looking to build here. Just start your shopping at Perks at Work. I mean, we do $2 billion in annual sales is all because of Perks at Work. And to Megan's point, if you think that's the catch in all this, the number of people on here, just so you know, whatever you spend will not even pay for the cost of the waters that we spend even in a day. We manage databases of tens of millions of users for the biggest companies in the world. But our view is let's play the long game.
Yeah.
One day, right? Maybe the integration of the Next Jump community will be valuable.
Right.
One day could be 5 years from now, could be 10 years from now. Talk about playing a long game. Bring a friend, tell someone, whether it's about the kids programs, about this program, that program, doesn't matter what it is, or even tell them about Steady Buckets, tell them about 305, the notion of it's stronger when it's partnered together in this community. So that was all from our brainstorm session on Friday.
Community 3.0.
Yes.
We're doing it.
Flipping on its head what a company is, what the modern day version of community is, and building it the right way, where a lot of people ask, oh, I would love to work here, West Point. Many of them were like, how do I get a job here? We're like, you don't need to get a job being an partner, an internal partner, or work from home next jumper to be part of this, we're opening up our doors so that we're literally saying, being a next jumper, maybe a year from now, will not mean that you're an employee, it just means you're part of this community. And you're getting as much value as you are also at some point even contributing into it.
There's actually a few questions. I don't know if you guys want to punch in the chat, if anybody in the room, but there was a few questions I wanted to go back to and before you had one last piece, right?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to show that now?
Oh, actually, you know what?
Do I do it now?
You want to see the video and then maybe we'll do some questions?
It's a very quick little short- it's a short video.
Okay, so I'm gonna have Laura and, okay, can you mute us?
It's a very
Just show you
short video.
the winning dance video. This is literally right before COVID hit. Okay, you're gonna mute us, right?